Hey guys, Crystal here. Today I'm going to bring you a video about 55 tips and tricks for Frostpunk that'll help you enhance your gameplay experience. These are going to range from beginner tips to advanced tips, and they're going to cover everything from heating to work shifts, children, death, medical, food, hope, discontent, laws, exploration, resources, gameplay, efficiency, research, economy, order, faith, you name it. Whew, can't believe I said that all in one breath. Anyway, let's get started. Tip number 1. Do not let your overdrive reach 100%. You will lose the game. This is bad. Tip number 2. Your overdrive raises your generator and steam hub heat zones by 1 level, as you can see here. Use this to avoid getting killed by cold snaps or surviving when the temperature lowers. It can save your life. Just don't let it hit 100%. Tip number 3. Heat zones created by the steam hubs, these ones, they share the same heat zone as your generator. They do not overlap, they do not stack. There are no bonuses for extra heat zones crossing each other. Space them out appropriately. Get the most out of your steam hubs. There's no benefit to overlapping them whatsoever. Don't do it. Tip number 4. If your coal consumption is hurting and you're in the red, you can use this consumption tab on your generator to find problem areas. If you find something that needs to be turned off, you can turn it off from here. Or you can use the magnifying glass to find it, or you can hit the magnifying glass again to select it, and you can manually turn it on and off from here. Or a third way to turn it off is from the heat map. The consumption tab is very handy because it shows you every single building in the entire game that is consuming heat. You can use this to manage your coal and mitigate any losses. Keep an eye on that tab. Tip number 5. You can use the indicators at the top of your heat map to see what the different heat zones will do to your citizens. Being in the red prevents them from getting ill. Yellow, low chance of getting ill. Light blue, low chance of getting ill. Cold, blue, moderate chance of getting ill, and it gets worse as the temperature goes down. They'll be moving through all these different areas. Just be mindful of what's going on with them. Tip number 6. If people are homeless and your generator is off, some of your people will die at night. This only happens at night. People can survive at night without a generator if they have homes. And people can survive without homes at night if they have the generator, but they cannot survive without both. You can use this fact to boost your economy by focusing one or the other on your first couple nights during gameplay. Just make sure they have one or the other. Tip number 7. Steam hubs consume less coal than generator range does. These 6 steam hubs that I have right here cover not only the entire generator range 4 range, but also a small area beyond it, and at maximum power they consume 1,500 less coal per day. Do not get the range. Get the steam hubs, use the steam hubs, they are much more cost efficient. Tip number 8. Insulation technology is a free heat level for a building of that type. Get these researches. They are worth it. They keep your citizens happy, alive, and healthy. Tip number 9. Extended shifts. You can see these extended shifts right here. This is the normal workday. This is the extended workday. is located here in the law book. It's an extra 4 hours of work, which is an extra 40% productivity. That's an amazing boost. Use it as often as your discontent will allow. Tip number 10. Emergency shift has a chance to kill people. However, you can prevent this. If you use emergency shift on a building, they will be safe to work for the following 4 hours. After those first 4 hours, the following 2 hours will have a chance to kill somebody in that facility. If you use emergency shift, let the people work for 4 hours, take them off and let them rest for the following 2 hours, and then return them. Nobody will ever die on your emergency shifts. Use this trick to mitigate your losses. If you use this little bit of knowledge, you can use emergency shifts whenever you'd like, so long as you remember to remove them for 2 hours after 4 hours of work following you pushing that button. That's how the mechanic works. Next tip, number 11. Child labor versus child shelters. Child labor, it is a very good law at the very beginning of the game, but it's really only effective if you use it as your first law, because children are mainly good at gathering and serving in cookhouses or gathering posts. Unless you're planning on going mass coal thumpers, child labor is only really beneficial for the first 3 or 4 days of your gameplay. But the effects of child shelters with apprenticeships, they last the entire game. So choose wisely. It's really up to you. If you do choose child labor, tip number 12, there will be an event at the beginning of the game where a child will get hurt working on a safe job. If you choose to give children double rations, it will prevent them from ever getting hurt for the rest of your game while they're working safe jobs. Give them double rations. It's so much better than having sick people. Tip number 13 is one a lot of people don't know. If you go the child shelter route and apprenticeship route, you need child shelters for them to help out in the facilities. For every 5 children staying in your child shelters, 5 children will help out one building by increasing its efficiency by 20%. If you have 15 children living in one child shelter, 3 of your buildings will be at 120%. If you have 2 child shelters full of 30 children, they'll help 6 buildings at 120%. If you want your apprentice children to be effective, you need child shelters for every single one of your children. That's how that mechanic works. Tip number 14. A dead body in your city, if someone dies and you do not have a cemetery or a snow pit, the body will rot and your citizens will constantly get sick for the rest of your game. At least until you build a cemetery or a snow pit. If you have a whole lot of hundreds of sick people, you might not have a cemetery or a snow pit. That is one of the reasons why people can get mass sick. Keep that in mind, and if somebody dies, make your next priority a cemetery or a snow pit. So, tip number 15. People will get sick at midnight. I'm sure you've noticed this in your games. Midnight is when the game tallies up a citizen's sick level, and I'll tell you what I mean. If I click on a citizen here, they live in a comfortable area, they work in a livable area, and they pass through a cold area. The game will tally up every action a citizen has taken through the course of the last 24 hours, and check how much time they've spent in each location's heat zone. If they spent enough time in a livable, chilly, cold, very cold, freezing area, their chances of getting sick go up. Midnight is when this calculation is done by the game, and that's when they get sick. So the longer they spend in zones that are yellow, red, or light blue, the less chance they have of getting sick. The longer they spend in the blue, dark blue, and purple zones, the higher chance they have of getting sick. Try to keep your zones heated as much as possible if you don't want your citizens getting sick. Tip number 16. Sick people will only die if they're not in a medical facility. People in a medical facility, regardless of how sick they are, they will not die. Tip number 17 ties into this. If you have more sick people than you have engineers to treat them, more buildings is better than more efficiency. If I have 10 sick people, but only 5 engineers, and I have 2 medical posts, it's better to move 1 engineer over to this medical post here. Now, all 10 sick people can fit inside each of these, 5 here and 5 here. They will heal slower because the efficiency has taken a hit, because I moved the engineer over. But, because all of them are being treated, nobody will die. They will heal slower. But more medical facilities is better when you have a ton of sick people. When your number goes down of sick people, you can move your engineers back over to re-increase the efficiency back up to 100%. But just remember, if you have more sick people than you have the ability to heal, spread out your engineers and get those sick people inside medical facilities. More facilities is better than more efficiency when you have masses of sick. Tip number 18, this is a big one, and is a reason why people should choose Snow Pit over Cemetery every time. This law, organ transplants, gives a permanent 20% increase to all medical facilities' efficiency, regardless of whether you have a dead body in your city or not. This effect is permanent and cannot be taken away. Your sick will heal 20% faster. If you ask me, that is far, far better than the cemetery's temporary hope loss reduction. Take Snow Pit, take organ transplant, every single game. Tip number 19, the gravely ill can only be treated safely in infirmaries. It's the only way to safely do it. However, tip number 20, the gravely ill can be treated in medical posts if you sign one of these 2 laws here, radical treatment versus sustain life. Sustain life will keep them alive, but taking up a bed in medical facilities, radical treatment will allow you to treat the gravely ill, but 3 out of 10 will become amputees. Yeah. Tip number 21, a care house can hold the gravely ill until you can hold until you have an infirmary. Duh. Tip number 22, prosthetics will not only allow you to build prosthetics, but by signing the law, it prevents amputees from committing suicide. Just by signing the law, nobody will commit suicide. Tell me that's not a good choice. Tip number 24, food additives keeps people full longer, but people become sick throughout your entire gameplay. This is bad. Soup feeds more people, but causes more discontent. This one's better if you have to take it. I prefer not to take either of them. It's up to you. However, regardless of which one you choose, where's my cookhouses. Regardless of which one you choose, you can turn them off by reselecting the standard meal in your cookhouse. Your soup or food additives button will be right next to it. You can always turn it off in your cookhouse. Remember to do that if you don't want them anymore. This next one's kind of funny. Tip number 25. If people are starving and dying, another hidden law will appear right here called alternative food sources. I'm not going to spoil what that is. If you want to find out, get sick, starving, and dying people in your city. It's pretty gruesome. Tip number 26. Hunters can be hunting at night and pulled out of the hunter's hut during the day to be used on something else. Double the productivity from workers. Free food. You can't beat that. Pull them out during the day, put them back in during the night. Call that the hunter's trick. Tip number 27. Laws that affect hope and discontent. Like corpse disposal, hope will fall, discontent will rise. These modifiers are in the temporary modifier category, meaning they only last for 24 hours. Don't worry about the discontent rise, and don't rely on the hope increase of those laws. Don't save them for later, and don't hold off if you can't use it. Just get the laws. Those modifiers will disappear in 24 hours. Don't worry about them. Tip number 28. Fighting arenas only affect one person once. If you have a fighting arena next to somebody's home and workplace, they will not benefit twice from it. Put all your fighting arenas by your houses. Or put them all by your workplaces, but houses is easier. Because every citizen's only affected once by it, so housing is easier. Tip number 29. The dueling law kills people. Don't use it. It's bad. Unless you're evil, then it's good, I guess. Maybe. Sorry. I have a little bit of a cold, folks, so bear with me here. Exploration. Tip number 30. Scouts travel faster to explore locations. I'll show you what I mean. If this scout is heading to this location, which I've been to before, you'll notice it has a blue symbol next to its name. This expedition travels faster following a known route to a surveyed location. They will travel almost 50% faster to areas you've been to before. If I wanted for this scout to get clear down to Winterhome, I would have them travel to the weather station first and then to Winterhome. You can save about 3 or 4 days throughout the entire game by using this trick to get to places you want to visit, by traveling to a known location first and then to the unknown location. You can cut hours off of your travel time. Use that trick if you want to save time. Tip number 31 ties into this a little bit too. Outpost teams travel faster than scout teams. If you can afford to spare an extra outpost team and have them move to a location at the same time as your scouts move to that location, the outpost team will arrive first and that location will become a known location, allowing the scouts to come up right behind the outpost team and travel there faster. So if you have your outpost team scout ahead of your scouts, you can actually explore the whole map about twice as fast. Most people, excuse me, sorry for blowing your ears out. Most people can't afford the outpost teams to do this, but if you really want to cut down your scouting time, it is an option for you. Tip number 32 is the biggest one of the entire game. If you'll notice, I only have a few hours left on this transport from the coal mine. If I use the simple trick, dismantle, rebuild, as soon as this transport gets to my city, a new one will start. That way you don't have to wait 24 hours for a new shipment. A new one will simply start. And every time a new shipment gets sent out, dismantle and rebuild your outpost and you will get almost double the resources from your outpost. You can use this trick on Tesla City to get a ridiculous amount of steam cores. Tip number 33. The very first automaton that you find, which I believe is found either at the Sturdy Shelter or the Bridge to Winterhome, somewhere around here. It's at the beginning of the game. The first automaton you find you can send back to your city, but you can also dismantle it for 2 steam cores. That's twice what you'd get out of a normal automaton. You can make 2 automatons out of the dismantled steam cores if you can afford to go without it. So keep that in mind. It's a good early game trick. Tip number 34. Scouts can die at the Gloomy Cave and Tesla City. These are the only places they can die. So be careful. Save, reload if you have to. There's a whole lot of RNG involved in it. Just be careful. So, one moment while I scroll down my tips and tricks list here. Tip number 35. Dismantling your beacon. Where are you? If you dismantle your beacon while scouts and outpost teams are on the field, they will all stop right where they are, and they will not move again until you rebuild your beacon. Likewise, if roads are destroyed that lead to your beacon, it will count as your beacon being deactivated and your scouts will all be stranded. Tip number 36. Dismantling your outpost will cause your outpost teams to become survivors that need to head back to your city, and they will die along the way. I will show you. I can either dismantle it or I can just get rid of the road. Where's my other outpost? There we go. 1 second. Dum-de-doo-de-doo. Well, maybe it only does do it when I'm dismantling it. There we go. You'll notice my outpost teams have become survivors. You don't want this because they can die along the way, so be careful not to disable your outposts. Even if you re-enable them, your outpost teams, they'll still be survivors. You don't want this, so let's see here. Alright, tip number 37. If you are short on wood or steel to build more resource depots, but you have an excess of wood or steel, use this trick. Store your extra wood as sawmills and put them on pause. You can arrange them better than I have. There, 60 wood stored for later use, and when I want it back, I can just cancel it and I get my wood back. You can also store steel the same way in Steam hubs. There. And when I do not want them to build, so I put them on pause. This is a good way to put resources into temporary storage as buildings, so when you need them later, you can just cancel the building and you'll get your resources back. So if you can't afford resource depots, these are 2 good buildings to temporarily store your resources in. And if you pause them, they won't be built, so you get a full refund when you cancel them. This is a great way to store your resources. You can do it with any building, but sawmills are 100% wood, steam hubs are 100% steel. They're the easiest to do, so that works for that. Tip number 38, gathering posts are faster at gathering resources and warmer than gathering directly from resource piles. Beginner tip, but some people don't know, so there you go. Tip number 39, resource depots do not benefit from heat zones at all, nor do they need them to function. Tip number 40, if your workers are idle in a workplace, such as having maxed out a coal thumper, or if you reached your maximum food storage in a hothouse, remove the workers and assign them to another job for maximum efficiency. Tip number 41, this is one on some people don't know. You can click on your stockpile to see how much you're making per day. Tip number 42, you can click on the storage tab of your stockpile to find specific resource depots. Say I wanted to find one with raw food. I can click the magnifying glass to locate it, and twice to select it, and I can change it to something else if I want. It's a quick and easy way, instead of having to click through hundreds of resource depots, to find the one that you want. Very easy. Scroll, find it, select it again, then you can change it to whatever you'd like. Alright, let me scroll down my list of tips and tricks here real quick. One moment. Tip number 43. Hold Alt to see where your entire labor force is. You can see who's working where. Yellow is good, black is bad. Numbers tell you what's what. Pretty self-explanatory. Tip number 44, hover over the lower right box to check where specific types of labor are located. This right here. If you hover over automatons, you'll see where they are located. If you hover over engineers, you'll see where they are located. Same with workers. If you want to see just workers and automatons, click the two check boxes, and you'll see where workers and automatons are working. I can do the same with engineers and automatons. Or I can do it with automatons and children. In the children one right now it's night, so it'll just highlight the children playing around, like right here. So, that's what this little box does. It's very handy for checking who's working where, so you can use this to easily see something. But if you hold down the Alt key, it'll just show where everybody's working. Tip number 45, if you build something, anything, the game will have idle citizens build it. If no one is idle, the next person to leave or change jobs will start building before they move on to their next task. Be careful about building too much. Sorry, need some water, folks. Be careful about building too much, or your entire workforce can spend the entire day building instead of working. That's bad. Tip number 46, the pause button is your friend. I know this one is kind of fairly obvious, but I'm just covering all my bases here. Tip number 47, you can rotate buildings with the middle button and make them fit somewhere they shouldn't fit. Rotate your buildings. Not all of them will change their shape, but you can rotate them all. Some of them will change their shape, like coal thumpers, workshops, prayer houses, stuff like that. You can rotate your buildings. You can also shrink them, but that's a tip for a whole nother video. Tip number 48, you can select a person to see their status. I've done this a little bit already this video, but you can see their home. You can see their workplace. And you can see their biggest concern. Right now, I have long work hours. If I hover over discontent, it also shows 21 overtime work. You can see people's stuff here. Likewise, you can select buildings, and you can see the workers in there. So, you can select any person you'd like, and it'll tell you all about them. If you click their picture, it'll center the game on them. So, tells what they are, who they are, where they work, where they live. You can select a person and find out a lot about them this way. So, tip number 49. The temperature gauge here shows you 5 days in advance, and you can see any temperature drops that are coming along. Plan accordingly. Scrolling down my list, one moment, folks. Tip number 50, automatons, can't even say that right. They do not gain bonuses from order or faith tree texts like shrines or agitators, and they can only reach a maximum of 95% efficiency. Automatons are best used at night and swapped out for workers during the day. Tip number 51, you can use the Workers tab to check the status of your citizens. You can see if they're sick with a cross right here. You can see if they're hungry with a fork right here. And you can use this to dismiss specific citizens that are sick and replace them with non-sick individuals. Sick people will go to treatment if you dismiss them. You can use this to release people you don't want and put people you do want in your buildings. You can do this with any workplace and any citizen. Dismiss. Dismiss if I don't want them there. It's a great way to focus your entire labor force the way that you would like to do it. Tip number 52, plan your roads in advance, like you can see I've done here. This will help you tremendously because if your workers have roads here, they'll spend less time making roads later when you need to build something right away. If I'm later in the game and I need some coal thumpers, I've already got my roads laid out for them. I can just build the thumpers, grab the gathering posts, boom, 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 boom. Everything's laid out. I know it fits, ready to go. Roads are already built. People can get there safely and start work right away as soon as they're done. Plan out your city early, build your roads early, have them ready for your buildings early. It'll benefit you in so many ways. Tip number 53. This is one a lot of newer players don't know, but everybody needs to know this one. One workshop operates at 100% efficiency. But if you have two workshops, the second workshop adds 40% efficiency. The third workshop adds 30%. The fourth workshop adds another 20% efficiency. And the fifth onward add 10% efficiency each for as many as you can make. You want as many workshops as you can possibly afford. The more you have, the faster your research will get done. You want at least 4. That's how many you can build without horrible diminishing returns. That's 140, 70, 80, 90. 5 workshops is ideal. That's 200% research speed right there. 5 is the ideal number. Any more than that is a bonus. Any less and you're not researching to your full potential. Get more workshops. The more you have, the better. Tip number 54, use your economy tab. This tab is underutilized by people, but tells you everything you need to know about your game. You can see your coal consumption. You can view graphs of what's going on. You can check the different tabs. You can check any buildings. You can use the magnifying glass to select the buildings. You can check your citizens. You can view a graph on every single one of them. You can see your citizens' conditions here. You can see what kind of buildings you have, how many vacant beds you have, how many house citizens you have, how much storage you have for everything. You can see your efficiency here. If something's not operating well, I can select it and find out why. Why? because it's only got 6 people in it, so now I can fix that. Keep an eye on your economy tab, and you'll be good to go. What's wrong with this one? I've only got 8 people in there, so that's a good way to keep track of everything. Tip number 55, last of all. Going down either the Order or the Faith law trees too far will give you a bad ending. You do not want to do this. Bad endings are bad. And I'm going to close this video off by showing you one of the bad endings. This is not one of the bad endings from the Faith tree, but it is one of the bad endings, so let's go off with a bang, shall we? Here we go, folks. I hope you all enjoyed this video. I hope some of these tips and tricks will help you. And that's a wrap, folks. Let me know if y'all enjoyed these tips and tricks, if they helped you out or not. If they have, maybe I'll make another video for you folks. Anyway, until next time, y'all take care. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.